Let's continue exploring the universe within art and the art behind farming. I'm your host, Ledoux, and in this episode, we're going to build a fully AFK wither farm. And best of all, this is totally expandable, so if you want better rates, you can just build more of the bait traps. And technically, just like we looked at in the last video, you really don't have to use wither roses. You could make this as simple as you want it to be. The benefit to using wither roses is not only do they block most mobs from spawning, but they will also kill all mobs except for wither skeletons. So with this design, mobs will never build up over time, so you can AFK this as long as you would like to, and you'll never have to refresh the other mobs to make them go away. And a really cool thing is that you don't have to add all of the roses and all of the spawn proofing all at once. You can just do this slowly over time, and the more roses and stuff that you add, the more skulls you will get in return. You will also get tons of stone swords, which we will go over how to get rid of at the end of the video. But here are all the materials that you will need in order to build a single bait trap. Now you can build as many of these traps as you would like, and I would actually recommend building at least 2. And then the spawn proofing and the wither roses are again totally up to you. The first thing we need to do is find a good nether fortress. Ideally, you want it to be over a lava lake with not very much area nearby for mobs to spawn on, and you definitely do not want it to be buried. All of this will help you save time later on when it comes to optimizing the rates of your farm via spawn proofing and stuff like that. Now you're also looking for these hallways that have the nether fence post windows. These tend to be really dense and have lots of spawn spots, but you could always build this on a bridge if you want to make it easier. It will generally have lower rates, but it will require less roses and be much easier to build. But for this example, I'm going to build in this cluster of hallways and rooms, mainly so that we can talk about how to include the roofs of these structures or multiple layers into a single farm. Now one thing to keep in mind, but that isn't necessary, is that I would recommend building these bait traps over lava. That way you don't accidentally build on top of a spawn spot. Because in structures, mobs have predetermined spawn locations, so wither skeletons will always spawn in these same places. Now there are ways to find these spawn spots to optimize the placement of this farm, but to find those spots will require either going into creative mode and using commands, or spending hours and hours in survival. And so I really don't think it's worth what you gain from what you lose. But we're going to start off with 4 buttons to mark where our trap is and to block spawns, then surround this on 3 sides with 8 walls. Now on the open side, in front of the walls, we need to place glass that is floating 3 blocks above the ground. So 2 blocks of air underneath that glass. And I didn't think about this until after I was building, but you should definitely place buttons underneath the glass down on the ground to block spawns. But once you have your basic trap built, it's time to go get a piglin. So we want a piglin with a sword that has been name tagged so he doesn't despawn, and we want to put him inside of a boat that has a chest so that we don't pick up an extra mob along the way. Then we just need to move him over to the fortress using a lead. Now one piece of advice when it comes to moving mobs in a boat using a lead is that you can go up scaffolding and the boat will just follow you. You can also pillar up with blocks and the boat will just kind of fly. It's also really important to keep in mind that wither skeletons will try to kill this pig while he's in the boat. So you need to make this area somewhat safe and wither skeleton proofed before you load him in. But once you get him in there and you dig a hole in the front, he will then be forever safe. Unless you leave him too far forward. You want him to be somewhat centralized in that thing, but you want him to be behind those front buttons. If he's not behind those front buttons, they will still be able to kill him as the skeletons fall into the kill chamber. So be sure to pull him kind of near the back where the walls are, behind those 2 front buttons. And you do want him to be somewhat centralized. But I've built countless of these bait traps, and I've only had it happen one time that he was too far forward. But once you get him in there, we need to dig down 3 on the front 4 blocks. But be very careful because odds are that there is lava underneath this. So if there is, you'll need to build a platform under here, and then build down 3 rather than dig down 3. But you want the tube to be 3 blocks deep. And to collect the drops, you will need a platform down here either way. So build this platform out of something that is spawn proof, either bottom slabs or glass. But once you have made sure to spawn proof this area, now we just need to build the Trident killer. So in the middle, 4 blocks from the top, we're going to place a piston on one of the 2 center blocks. And then more pistons facing the inside 1 block away from each other. Then observers looking at each of these pistons So these observers will also be on one of the two middle blocks. Then in the corners, we just need to place one dropper in each corner, and now we need to place a lever on one of the droppers, turn that lever on, and then turn that lever off. And all of the pistons should start moving in this pattern. So go ahead and turn the lever back on to make it stop, and now we need to build a bottom section. So just place a 4x4 square of solid blocks underneath everything you just built. Now we need to build the collection system. So go down by 2 temporary blocks so that we can place a double chest aligned with one of the edges, then 4 hoppers going into the back of that chest. So the chest will be aligned with one of the edges, and the 4 hoppers will be aligned with the 4 center blocks of the 4x4 platform. Now we need to place a rail on one of the front hoppers, and we want that rail to be pointed toward the back. So if we need to redirect it with another rail, we can do that, and then place a glass pane on the back hopper, place a minecart with hopper, and then push it toward the glass pane as far as it will go, and then break out the rail. And we need to do the same thing on the other side. Now there are alternative ways to make this collection system work, but ever since 1.21, I've had troubles with minecart hoppers. So I'm just having you build 2 of these, to avoid any potential problems. And the last thing we need to do is surround the entire Trident killer that we just built with another line of solid blocks, except for the dropper that has your lever on it. That will be the only hole. This will prevent mobs from getting pushed through the sides of the Trident killer. Then go back up to the top, and we need to place trapdoors on the sides of the blocks that have the buttons on them, and then the blocks opposite of those. These trapdoors need to be where you see here. Then throw in a trident, and you'll be done. And remember that you can always throw in up to 4 tridents so that it kills the mobs just a little bit faster. But now we just need to clear out some area. So don't break out the roofs just yet. Just focus on breaking out all of the walls. Now, if you have different elevations of floor, do not flatten this out. The spawn spots sometimes are at the same Y level as the floor, so you don't want to break any of the floor blocks. Just fill in any holes with dirt, or any fence posts that are in the floor, switch those out with dirt, and then any holes that are blocking the route to your piglin, just fill these in also with dirt. And so you want there to be room around the piglin, so that mobs can walk around him to get to the kill chamber. So once you get all of the walls cleared out and the holes filled in, you should be left with something like this. Now when it comes to the roofs, sometimes there are spawn spots up on the roof. Now the main problem is that mobs will need a line of sight to the piglin in order to aggro him. So if you have a roof directly over the piglin, they won't be able to see him, so it won't actually be very effective. Now you also definitely do not want them to be able to jump into his little chamber. So you want the roofs to be at least 2 blocks away from his wall blocks or his glass blocks. You do not want them to be able to get him on the inside of his chamber. So basically, any roof that is directly above or near him will need to be broken. But any of the roofs that are just diagonally adjacent to where you can still see the piglin while standing on that roof, those are all totally fine. We just need to have a way for the skeletons to be able to jump down from those roofs, if they do spawn there. And skeletons can jump down 3 blocks. So we need to have an upper slab that is 3 blocks above the main floor, so that the wither skeletons can walk underneath them so they don't get in the way. So in building skeleton access, just remember that they can jump down up to 3 blocks, and the bottommost one needs to be a upper slab that is 3 blocks above the ground. So 2.5 blocks of air underneath that slab and the floor. Everything else is just a staircase or an extra block or something. Now, this will take some trial and error. This is one of those things that you will improve the more that you use the farm and the more that you look at the farm being used. Because skeletons, mobs in general aren't very smart, and sometimes they'll either get confused or they won't have a line of sight when you think they should, and so you can tweak this as you go along. Like if you notice that the skeletons can't see the piglin from where they spawn, just break out a few extra blocks to increase the available line of sight. And that's actually one of the fun things about custom farms such as this, is that the more you pay attention and the more you use it, the more things that you can customize to increase the rates even more. Now, if you don't want to use wither roses, you can do the same method that we went over in the last video, and that is just refreshing the spawns occasionally after the mobs build up over time. But if you want to dramatically increase the rates and make this fully AFK where you never have to refresh the spawns, then you need to plant wither roses within 14 blocks from the pig. When doing this, be sure to switch the floor with dirt. Do not place dirt on top of the floor. And you only need roses within the aggro range of a pig, which is a 14 block circle in every direction. So outside of this circle, you can just add spawn proofing rather than adding wither roses. And if you build a bunch of these bait traps, it's a good idea to overlap the aggro range so that you don't need to spawn proof in between the farms. And if you need an easy way to get tons and tons of wither roses, I will link a video here on the screen and in the video description. But if you do build multiple bait traps, it'll be nice to connect all of the Trident killers together so that you have a single lever and not, 4 different levers. So just replace the levers with a repeater pointed into the droppers, and now we need to connect all of these repeaters together. So just run blocks that connect all of your Trident killers together, and these blocks can be spawn proof or they can be solid blocks, it doesn't matter, because redstone will block spawns. Then we just place a lever somewhere in the middle, turn that lever on, and then run dust from one repeater to the next. Then we'll go back in and add more repeaters to refresh the signal to make sure that that lever is strong enough to power all of the droppers. And remember that it doesn't matter which of the 4 droppers on the Trident killers are being powered. As long as one of the 4 corner droppers is receiving a signal, the Trident killer will be off. It also might be nice to connect all of your bottom platforms together. Just be sure to use spawn-proof blocks because you wouldn't want to deal with mobs when you're going around trying to collect all of your loot. And now we just need to build an AFK platform. So roughly in the middle of where all of your bait traps are, we need to build scaffolding going up. And we want to extend this up 25 blocks above the highest point in the closest farm. So like this one has a high platform, so normally we would build 25 blocks above that if it was our only farm. But since we're building it in between these two and this one's closer, we're going to build it 25 blocks above the ground on this one. Just keep in mind that mobs will spawn in a spherical radius around the player between 24 and 44 blocks away. So the best place to AFK will be very, very different from farm to farm, since these are so customizable. But build this platform out of glass so that you can see what mobs are spawning where. That way, over time, you can adjust where your AFK spot is, you can adjust the spawn proofing. That's one of the fun things about this farm, is that it's like a series of puzzles. The more that you use it, the more you will see different things that can be changed and improved, making it more and more personalized as you go. Like right there, we see a skeleton and a ghast are spawning over in this area, so we can just go over here and spawn proof it. Throw down some lower slabs or some buttons, and now we won't have that problem anymore. Now one place to definitely spawn proof or to build more bait traps is in these lower hallways, because you can't actually see these from the sky. Another way to adjust the spawn proofing is to change where you AFK. Like if we back up until that skeleton disappears, we now know that mobs can no longer spawn over in that area. But we might be too far away from that bait trap for it to be active. This one will still work, so changing where you AFK will depend on where your farms are. So again, the more that you use this farm, the better the rates will end up being. The more that you add roses, the more that you spawn proof and adjust your AFK, all of these things can eventually be optimized. Or like if you notice pigs are escaping your wither roses, you can build a wall there so that they can no longer escape and will get killed by the roses. So above all, just have fun playing around with, personalizing, and improving this farm. And one last thing to mention is that you will get completely overrun with stone swords. Now you could always go through and get rid of these by hand, but that will take a ton of time, especially when all you really want is the wither skulls. So what we can do is build some non-stackable item filters and then throw all the swords into lava. So we're going to move our output chest over by 4 blocks so that there's 2 hoppers in between where the chest originally was and where it is now. Now while you're doing this, be sure not to accidentally bump into the minecarts. You don't want those to be moved. But behind these 2 new hoppers, we're going to place solid blocks, then blocks under that and behind that, targets under these, glass behind those, then a temporary block so we can place a block down and back, and we should end up with this shape right here. Now on these top blocks, we're going to place comparators facing toward the back. Again, be sure not to bump into the minecarts, but then we need redstone dust on top of these 6 blocks right here, and then torches on the front side of the targets. So this is what you should end up with. These are the non-stackable item filters. Now we need to place 2 hoppers under these pointed down into a double chest, then another hopper pointed down from that, going into a dropper. And now this dropper can either just spit the items over into lava, since there's probably a lava lake underneath you, or if there's not, you can always just add a lava source in front of that dropper. We'll just build a little lava cage, place in a lava bucket, and now we just need to build a clock so the dropper spits the items into lava. So diagonally behind the dropper, we need a platform that is 6 by 2. Place a comparator looking at the dropper on subtraction mode, like so, going into a solid block, then a piece of redstone dust. Then on the other side, we need another solid block next to that dust, then a repeater with no additional delay, then a redstone dust, and then a block with redstone dust on top, and that's it. Now all of the stone swords will get sucked out by this non-stackable item filter and get thrown into lava by the dropper. Now it is possible for this to skip a sword or two depending on lag, which is why we built 2 of the sections instead of just 1. But to demonstrate, we're going to throw in a couple swords and some coal, and we can see that the swords went away, but the coal continues on into our storage. And of course, when it comes to your storage system, that is totally up to you. You can go as crazy as you would like. You could have item sorters and shulker loaders and combine all of the storages together into one mega storage. But if you are interested in item sorters or shulker loaders or any kinds of storage upgrades, I will be sure to link some videos here on the screen and in the video description for you to check out. And while you're here, just know that I have tutorials for mini-games, note block songs, redstone, commands, and more. But that's all we got for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you did or didn't like about the video, or if you have any questions or requests, and I will do my best to help you out. Or if you don't know what to say, just tell me hi. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. Just know that you are totally awesome, and I hope to see you again soon. But until then, I've been your host, Amaladu, building a bedrock farm with you, and reminding you as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye!